Hey guys, Tyler here, and this is the Garage Warrior podcast and videocast. I'm super excited today to have on the call my good friend Rusty Moore. How's it going today, Rusty?
It's good to go on going awesome, Tyler. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. We're just
Good.
about to move into a new house, and it's been a crazy last few weeks, but I'm really stoked I could get you on the podcast because you got a lot of great information that you're going to share today. Before we dig into that, though, Rusty, maybe you can give kind of the listeners, like I tell people, a 50,000 mile view. Who are you, and what are you hoping to teach the world?
Okay, so what I am on my unique point of view is my background is in clothing. I trained like in the 90s to be a personal trainer, but never really acted on it. I built up muscle over a period from like 1990 to maybe like 1999. Got kind of big and bulky, and then saw the movie Fight Club and thought, I kind of would rather just be kind of tight and dense and strong and
Right.
not necessarily have the bodybuilder builder look. And so I looked online, like, how do I lose muscle or tighten up the muscle that I have, kind of lighten up without losing strength. And over a period of about 5 years, I, did tons of research. Actually wrote a book, never released it. And that time I thought, how am I going to reach people with this information? Started a blog. The blog took off like crazy because there's other people who thought the same as me, like they want to be fit, but they still want to fit into nice clothes and stuff.
Right.
And then 2010, I released my first product. I've released a few since then. Yeah, so that's kind of my background. And also at that same time, when I first started my blog, I began coaching. It was kind of a weird thing. There was a New York fashion model contacted me, a male model. And then I started getting clients, coaching clients of female and male fashion models, so not fitness models, but like fashion models.
Interesting.
A large amount. So I did that for about 2 years before I released my product. And so I kind of have a good insight of what it takes to kind of create that sort of look. And if, especially for women, if their thighs get too big or their,
Right.
hips and butt, like how to kind of tighten that up. And so that's my background.
Yeah, that's such an interesting background because it seems kind of counterintuitive. Like most people you'd think would be like, guys would be like, how do I build muscle? And, ladies obviously want to slim down typically and stuff like that. But it's a counterintuitive thought process to go from, adding muscle to just, hey, I want to look great. I want to feel great. I want to perform great. I want to have good strength and stuff like that. But I don't want to get too bulky. I want to have kind of that lean athletic look. I like how you used Fight Club as an example because nobody in that movie was really that big. But they were
Right.
very lean, very cut, obviously had some strength and some explosive power. So that's a cool thing. I didn't know you did the fashion model stuff. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. And at the same time, she's my ex-girlfriend now, but I dated a girl for 6 years who was a fashion designer. So we'd go to different shows and stuff, and I picked up other clients,
Right.
with that as well. But yeah, the main thing is, I think for guys is a lot of programs will say, hey, we can add 15 to 20 pounds of muscle on your body. Well, that's easy to do if you just focus on squats, deadlifts, and that sort of stuff. But
Right.
if 90% of the mass is on your lower body, it creates an imbalance. You kind of go backwards in a lot of ways. And what I focus on, even though people kind of make fun of it, is a little bit more upper body and maintaining the lower body once you get it as big as you would like. I think the squats and deadlifts and things like that are useful, but it doesn't take, maybe 1 to 2 years to reach the size you want. And then if you go past that, you're not fitting into jeans. You got to wear like rough skins or tough rider, or, kind of old school dad jeans and stuff. So
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I'm quite predisposed to a large lower body and mix that up with like really heavy deadlift squats and swings, and I have a gene issue sometimes because of the leg size. So I totally get what you're saying. I also like what you said there was talking about women with the same problem. Their legs are getting too bulky. My wife tried out a CrossFit class a few months back, and it was so funny. The teacher there was just in fantastic shape, but like you're saying, she didn't. This is going to sound terrible. She didn't look good because she was squatting like 300 pounds and her legs were huge and her butt was huge and her it was just quadzilla. You know what I mean? It was just too much.
right.
Where you're like, like you look fantastic and you're fit and stuff like that, but like most people would be like, whoa, I would never want to look like that. And I agree with you. Like you should be aesthetically pleasing in addition to having performance at the same time. So
Yeah, exactly. And some people are genetically built bigger than others. My good friend
right,
Elliot Hewells, he's big and he's going to be that way. But even with him, like he'll even try to balance it out. You know, like
right.
his legs could get crazy large and stuff, but he kind of backs off a little bit on some of that stuff.
Yeah, Elliot's got some masterfully huge legs.
Right.
So tell us, like, what is the approach though? Let's dig into the meat and potatoes of this. Like, what's the approach? How do you train people for that? Let's tackle exercise first. Maybe we'll talk about nutrition and some other tips and tricks at the end of the call. So, how do people need to train in order to make that happen?
Yeah, so the main thing is for women, like a lot of classes, what they will say, or personal trainers will say is, use high reps and go for the burn,
Sure.
avoid low reps. If you can do 6 reps, let's aim for 7. There's been recent studies over the past few years that show you that whether you do 3 reps, 5 reps, 10 reps, 12 reps, 15, if you hit failure, it's going to increase mass.
Right.
So these women are doing sets of 12 and they're like, well, if I do a set of 12, my legs aren't going to get bigger. What happens is legs do get bigger. Now, in addition to that, with higher reps, it pumps blood into the muscle.
Right.
And so with an increased pump, it increases capillary density. So it builds sort of veiny muscles. And the one thing that most women that I know anyways, they don't want big veiny muscles.
Right.
So what I recommend is to not go to failure,
Sure.
to train shorter failure and avoid the pump. So train lower reps. So like for women, typically I have them sticking around the 5 range,
Right.
but doing a set of 5 with a weight they could probably do 8 times.
Right.
So that's when it works better.
So you're really more working on kind of strength, power, speed, like central nervous system efficiency, things like that.
Exactly. So yeah, exactly. So women can get stronger and they can get all the benefits of having stronger bones and stuff without having the puffy, bloated muscles to go along with that.
Right. That's a good approach. I completely agree with that approach. I like to train my people that way. I'm actually just really happy you brought up the concept of like going to failure is what builds muscle, regardless of kind of what rep range you're in. Like even a marathon runner, he's doing 10,000 reps. But you see a high-level marathon runner, they have a decent amount of muscle on their body. It's different type of muscle and so on and so forth, but they're still building it at the same time. I'm happy you highlighted that because that's so important. And not a lot of people talk about that because I think a lot of people think what you're saying is true. Like, these women like, oh, I'm going to do 15 reps with the dumbbells and I'll slim up, I'll tone up. When in reality, like developing strength and really watching your diet, getting the right type of cardio and conditioning is what's going to slim you up, not so much the high rep muscle pumping like you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, those routines aren't that fun. I mean, to me, it's so much more fun to lift, 3 to 5 reps and just to see an increase in the bar poundages. You feel better. You're not completely blitzed. Now, in my men's program, I do have phases where the guys do go for fatigue and failure and stuff to build sarcoplasmic growth, the fluid within the muscle cell, the quick mass.
Yeah.
And strategically, that's something you want to do, but definitely not all the time.
Yeah, just in particular areas to make their bodies look better in a certain way. You touched on something right there. This is a good thing for the listeners. Can you kind of touch on sarcoplasmic hypertrophy versus myofibrillar hypertrophy? Because I know a lot of people probably never heard those words before, and I think it's actually an important thing to talk about when we're talking about developing different types of muscle.
Yeah, so I like to think of the muscle cell as like a balloon, if you look at it this way, and sarcoplasmic growth is like a water balloon. So sarcoplasmic growth would be the fluid inside the balloon. And so if you were to increase the size of a water balloon, the fastest way to do it would be to add water. A slower way to do it, you couldn't really do this anyways, it would be to have a thicker balloon. And so I like to think of the balloon as the actual muscle fiber, the actual contractile tissue. Mm-hmm. And that's the myofibrillar part of the cell. And the thing about it is when you go towards more towards the myofibrillar part of the muscle cell, you actually increase strength, because that's it's the actual protein. So for fast growth, you would go for sarcoplasmic growth, typically like, higher reps, training to fatigue, lower reps and strength build the actual plastic of the balloon, if that makes sense.
Right. And people don't realize that like myofibrillar density is what causes athletes to have that look. Like, when you look at an athlete who's like freakishly strong or freakishly talented physically versus like a bodybuilder, even a natural bodybuilder, their muscle looks different. Like one looks kind of swollen, the other one looks dense, like they're chiseled from stone. And that's what that myofibrillar density does. Like, I remember meeting a guy named Slim the Hammerman years and years and years ago, and he was like this world-renowned strongman with his hands, and he would smash. He spent like 20 or not 20, like 50 years smashing granite with a giant sledgehammer, and then he did all these feats of strength, and his forearms look like steel cables. And I'd never seen a bodybuilder or anybody with forearms like that before in my life, and he probably had myofibrillar density out the wazoo in his arms like that. So.
Yeah, and my programs focus more on that, again, because I want people to be able to, over the years, get stronger and keep their bones strong and stuff, but without necessarily increasing the overall mass of their body.
Right.
So, yeah.
So we talked kind of theory for men and women as far as like kind of where you go with it. Maybe we can just jump into like what type of exercises you use, or maybe like just a basic program for both men and women as well.
Yeah, so just for a basic program for men and women, I actually like to stick to the basic bodybuilding gym type exercises. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily think that, I think that there's definitely some advantages to free weights. I think it creates a more balanced body and things like that. But I'm fine with people using machines that are body weight. To me, it's the rep ranges, the rest periods, recovery periods, and nutrition and stuff like that matters. So for me, like maybe I enjoy doing an incline barbell press for my upper chest.
Right.
But somebody else maybe it irritates their shoulders and they want to use dumbbells on an adjustable incline bench, right? So to me, it's not necessarily, my favorite exercises may not hit you the same way your favorite exercises would hit me. So exercise selection is really individual. My programs allow for that flexibility.
Right. I think that's important. I mean, because ultimately, like, you stick to the workout you like to do. And, if you look at somebody else's workout program and you do some exercise, and like you said, maybe it causes aches and pains, or you just don't like the stuff. Like, why would you? I mean, I personally love, progressive bodyweight training, more complex weight training and stuff like that. But there's a lot of people that's just not appropriate for. Maybe they have injuries or so on and so forth. So that's cool how you kind of do that. So what are the basic, like, kind of motor patterns you look at? So obviously we can choose exercise selection. How do you break down the body into different movement patterns so that you can select exercises based on those movement patterns?
Yeah, I just like to keep it kind of basic. So for guys, a big weakness would be upper chest. So if somebody has like a large lower chest, kind of droopy lower chest, but then lacks their upper chest area, obviously they do inclines, and maybe they would do that first. For women, it just really depends on what their weakness is. Right. And, a lot of them avoid doing upper body movements, but then, what's crucial for women is to develop density in their triceps. So then, and to kind of tighten those up so they don't get what they call bingo wings.
Bingo arms, the flappy arms like that.
For things like that. So really it just depends on the person's weaknesses or what they want to emphasize.
Right. So you kind of dissect the body a little bit and say like, hey, if your upper chest is kind of weak, use these exercises or these movement patterns, and if your butt's kind of weak, use this. If your triceps are flapping like bingo arms, use this kind of thing. Yeah,
and I think people, what they tend to do is they gravitate towards the lifts that they're strongest at, especially guys. They get competitive. I was stupid because squats were my strongest exercise, right. And I got up to like 405. I never go near that amount of weight now.
Yeah.
First of all, didn't feel very good on my spine.
Right.
And again, I just had to buy some like dad jeans, some 1990s like relaxed fit
with with like the elastic waistband and.
Well, I'd have that, but you know what I'm saying. Like it's not a good look for anyone. I mean, really.
Yeah, I found Lucky jeans, man. Lucky jeans tend to fit the larger, lower-bodied folks quite well.
Right.
So we talked about exercise selection. We kind of talked about theory a little bit. Let's talk about something that everybody wants. Everybody wants abs, right? Doesn't matter if you're a bodybuilder, if you're a fitness model, if you're an athlete. Everybody wants to have awesome abs. How does this kind of sarcoplasmic versus myofibrillar, blah, 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 how does that all kind of factor into having a nice lean waistline?
God, well, the abs thing's interesting because now women, so a lot of people, they talk about six-pack abs. Right. Most women don't want like ripped six-pack abs. They want
like
flat
veins on their belly.
Yeah. I mean, they have, you go online, you see that. You see these women, it's just like, I don't know, I don't want to, I don't think a girl should have a better abs than me, you know?
Right. No, like a
Not
flat
because
stomach,
I'm,
maybe a line down the middle kind of thing, right?
yeah, exactly. So the way I like to look at abs is to increase the density without increasing size.
Right.
I kind of like a lot of static movements like planks, things like that.
Sure.
If somebody, if somebody's younger and they haven't, so here's the thing about abs. I think once you develop them using things like hanging leg raises and resistance and all that, they're super easy to maintain. So I think you put in 1 to 2 years of like hanging leg raises, just like renegade rows and things like that, then you can maintain them just with planks, keeping your body fat low.
Right.
I don't think you need to do tons of abs exercises. And a problem too is, we both promoted actually your product, the sitting solution, right?
Yeah.
If you do too many forward flexing movements,
Right.
You get stuck in sort of a flexed position.
Right. You're increasing poor posture, basically.
Yeah, so for me, I can't do that. I sit too much. I have back issues from years ago. So I basically just stick to planks now. I've already done my year's worth of hanging leg raises. I really don't need to do that.
Right.
And keep a clean diet and just have a decent resistance training workout that doesn't have tons of abs exercises.
You need to go back and follow my phase 1 on 0 to 6 pack abs that my buddy Dr. James Baker teaches, man.
That's what I was saying. It says sitting solution. I meant 0 to 6 pack abs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I fully believe in that program.
Yeah.
I mean that's more of what I recommend versus getting on like a decline bench and hugging a couple plates and then just crushing your spine.
Yeah, I agree with
sure.
you, man. I agree with you. Well, that kind of brings us to the topic. We talked a little bit about ab training, and I agree with you. You really only need a certain amount of development to get the shape. Obviously, a huge part of this is diet, right?
Right.
So tell us kind of like what's the approach? What's the approach to get that like kind of Fight Club look or that fashion model look when it comes to diet?
Yeah, to me, a lot of people make diet really complicated. It doesn't really have to be. And they have people who will be like hit your macros or whatever they call that. Or there's people who are crazy about intermittent fasting, or you have like the low carb people getting in ketosis, or all that stuff.
Everybody's dogmatic with this stuff, and it drives me crazy, man. It's like, this is the way. Everybody's wrong, right?
Exactly. So for me, the way I coach most people to eat is in a way to where they don't get an insulin spike during the day.
Right.
Some people are more carb sensitive than others. Like I'll eat maybe a couple eggs in the morning, or just like a protein shake, and then a pretty light lunch, because I don't want to get the insulin spike, and then you get the afternoon crashes and stuff. Then I work out in the afternoon, and then I eat the majority of my calories after that workout window, during the recovery window. But you don't have to do that. I think really it just comes down to an overall average calorie deficit. That's what works well for me. And I have outlines in my programs of how to do that and calorie requirements and things like that. But it's a lot easier than people make it, I think.
Yeah. So just looking at it from that perspective, because I mean, a lot of people out there are now arguing like, it's all about insulin sensitivity. As long as you can maintain insulin sensitivity, you can eat as many calories as you want, and you'll never gain fat. And like, yeah, maybe that's true for like a handful of people, but I just don't see that work across the board. I've seen people completely and miserably fail while in ketosis, and a short period of time it'll work, and then it'll just stop and plateau, and then their metabolism will crash, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, what's your take on all that, this dogmatic viewpoint on nutrition?
I tried the whole ketosis thing. I've tried it a number of times. You eat a bunch of cheese and eggs and bacon and all that stuff. And for me, it just, first of all, I got slower results compared to just having a calorie deficit. Mm-hmm. And secondly, like let's say I'm going out with some friends to a happy hour, or I'm watching a movie with a girl and she has red vines. I don't want to have to pass up on that stuff
forever.
I mean, seriously, like if I go to like a movie, I want to have my red vines and Diet Coke, and I can do that because I have, I'll have created a larger calorie deficit throughout the week leading up to that.
Sure.
And if I eat more than what I planned, the following couple of days I'll eat less. It's really that easy, I think.
Right. You just kind of balance it based on what your social circumstances are, and kind of day to day, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think anything is like poison or, I'm not a crazy sugar Nazi or, things like that. I do think to concentrate more on the whole foods overall. But like I said, I'll eat a pack of red vines every now and then or gummy bears or, drink a Diet Coke or two. It's
Yeah.
doesn't affect me negatively.
I love that. I think that there's so many people out there saying, your body's 80% nutrition. And like, I don't agree that it's 80%, but the funny thing to me is that, like, to me, exercise propagates discipline and consistency. So if you can prove to me that you can exercise 3 days a week consistently and you could build a little bit of lean muscle, jack up your metabolism, reset your insulin sensitivity, so on and so forth, then you're probably ready to start looking at nutrition. People don't realize that people will try to get somebody on this crazy dogmatic program before they have any discipline developed whatsoever. And it's way, way harder to stay consistent on a nutrition program than it is to stay consistent on an exercise program, because it's
For sure.
all the time. You have to think about it all the time versus I got to make it to the gym 3 days a week for an hour, or 4 days a week for 45 minutes or whatever. So I think that people are really missing the ball on it. I like how you have a more relaxed approach to it, because as I get older and I try more dogmatic approaches on different clients and different people, I start to realize the best approach is just a simple kind of long-term approach to this stuff. And getting consistent with it, that's just the real key to success over the long haul. So,
yeah, it's funny too that you mentioned age. Like I'll be turning 45 in December, and some of these things that are more radical approaches worked better for me when I was 30 or even in my late 20s. I think you got to be a little more careful as you get older,
right.
And even with your training, you do have to. I think that the routines do have to burn a few more calories and stuff. And I think if you're in your 40s and you haven't had to do any sort of cardio or integrals when you were younger, that changes. I mean, it really does. I heard that when I was younger, but I didn't believe it until now that I'm in my mid 40s. So I believe it now.
Oh, that's hilarious. I like that. That's a good perspective. So let me ask you this. You have some interesting viewpoints on cardio and conditioning. A lot of people talk about high intensity. Some people talk about slow, long duration. What's your take on all that?
Well, there was a recent study, maybe a few years back, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, that what it did was I can't remember the name of the study right now, but it's over.
We won't hold you to it.
Products talk about it. Anyways, it takes all of the EPOC studies over the past 30 years. So the afterburn effect studies, right? And it talks about all of that. And what they found was that the afterburn effect is a lot less than what people initially thought. So for me, I concentrate on how many calories you can burn in the gym. Now, I like cardio machines because you can use precision with how much,
the metrics and the numbers and stuff.
You really can. So like I have a real systematic approach in my cardio course that really you use progressive cardio. So it's hard to do if you're doing circuits and things like that, to know if you're 25% higher intensity compared to if you're on a treadmill or that sort of thing, right?
Sure.
But what I focus on is burning calories in your workout, and anything else that happens after that is a bonus.
Right.
I do prefer higher intensity interval trainings and things like that because it's more time efficient.
Right.
I can walk on a treadmill for 2 hours to burn a certain amount of calories, or I can do a more intense workout, for 20 minutes. And that's where I think things like interval training, whether you're doing body weight or machines or anything like that, comes into play.
Right. I like how you brought something up there, which a lot of people don't bring up, and that is progression in cardio. I'm sure you've looked at my stuff. I'm like a progression Nazi. Like, there's always a progression and a regression. And my big message is preaching to people, like, to get better results, all you have to do is make progress forward. You know what I mean? Even if it's just little tiny steps. And with cardio, I feel like people shit the bed on that, like, big time. They'll go out and they'll run, and people say, well, I run because I want to get the lean runners look. Well, guess what? The lean runners run fast, and they've trained to run fast over a period of time, and they measure their time and they measure their metrics because they're constantly trying to get faster. They're not just going for a jog. And I like how you use the cardio machines. Like one of my favorite machines is either my Airdyne or my rower, because you can actually look at metrics. And on my rower, I'll look at my 500-meter split, and I'm constantly trying to work my 500-meter split down based on the length of the interval or the length of the row that I'm doing. Because what I understand is that progression means, at least in cardio, it's density or it's duration. You know, either you're going to get more work done in less time, or you're going to get the same work done per minute or whatever for a longer period of time. So
right.
I'm happy you mentioned that, because a lot of people don't talk about progression when it comes to cardio. They just want to go exercise. They want to go get their sweat on. They don't want to look at it from a perspective of like, hey, you can get your sweat on, but you know, a month from now you should be getting your sweat on a little faster or a little denser than the time before that. So that's good.
Yeah, exactly. And like things like CrossFit and stuff is they, you know, kind of pride themselves on working out until you puke or doing stuff until you, but like, is that really a measurement? Like what, you know, you'd be like, well, on Tuesday I puked and then on this Monday I didn't. So what is this Monday's workout better or not? It's like you said, you can track on cardio machines really well. And what I like about them too is it doesn't interfere with your resistance training workouts as much as doing circuit type stuff at the end of a workout.
Right. I just had a thought pop in my head, so I got to jump in here because we talked about this a little bit before, like the myofibrillar versus sarcoplasmic. One of the things I see is that a lot of CrossFitters do typically have good muscle tone. I think the men generally look better than the women.
Right.
My thought to you is like, a lot of CrossFit, their workouts is going to failure and then resting for like a few seconds and then trying to get a few more reps out and failure. Do you think that they're actually creating an optimal environment for building mass?
I think that they're burning a lot of calories and stuff too. I think that they're doing a decent, you know, they probably get a growth hormone surge from you know, training before they've recovered and stuff. But one thing I've noticed is it's a lot of young people in CrossFit. I was at 45-year-olds. I just, it'll be interesting to see in the next 15 years what happens. But I think that their workouts are not very good for strength because they push to failure and stuff.
They don't work on the skill, right? They don't actually work on like the skill of movement or muscular coordination and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right, like an Olympic lifter, like a true Olympic lifter would never push to failure like that they do. They would always train short of failure, not exhaust the muscle. They would, you know, awaken the CNS without, you know, burning out their muscle and central nervous system.
Sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about that stuff, because you got a new program coming out right now, and you talk a lot about higher frequency, higher volume training, and that's something a lot of people will shun away from. They think, you know, train one body part a week, or, you know, do like, you know, a little strength training program 3 days a week or something like that. Tell us a little bit more about that, the science behind it, and how that all is working out.
Yeah, so it's visual impact frequency training. I'm sure you'll have a link below this video somewhere for people. But anyway, what it is, you know, so I'm kind of a geek when it comes to collecting workout books and stuff. And I've followed, you know, I'm really interested in kind of like former Soviet Union and Bulgarian strength training programs.
Oh, they were light years ahead of what we had going on here. It was amazing.
Yeah, I think I got like into it after watching Rocky IV and seeing like, oh, the Soviets, they have like, but then I did more research on the history and discovered that in like the 70s and 80s that, yeah, the Eastern Europeans would destroy people in the West, like in you know, regular Europe and the United States. When it came to strength and power. And what they found was, you know, back when the United States was competing in the 80s, like they would maybe train their entire body a couple times a week, kind of use more of a bodybuilder philosophy of, you know, working a lift, you know, hard to failure, breaking down the muscle, and then let it recover. And hopefully it would recover stronger.
Sure.
What the Bulgarians and Soviets did was they're like, well, what if we didn't break down the muscle at all? We just train short of failure, you know, fewer sets and reps, have a recovery window of 24 hours, and then hit that same lift again. It worked so well that what they did was go from training a muscle group once a day or lift once a day. Eventually they're up to like 5 or 6 times a day. And I don't think that's practical, but we can learn some stuff from them.
Right.
Like what if you did your bodybuilding workout and like your training your chest and triceps or whatever, but you train your entire body in one workout. And the way you could do that is you're only doing a few sets per body part.
Right.
And then train the body part the following, or the entire body the following day. You're avoiding breakdown, avoiding fatigue. And what happens is you'll get the same results as the Eastern Europeans did back in the day. I created a program based on that and released it to some beta users about 6 months ago, just a small portion of my newsletter. And the results are outstanding. And then myself, I'm on doing this the second time around and just hit a personal best and bench press, curling more than I've ever curled. My shoulder press is stronger than it's ever been. I've lifted for over 27 years in a commercial gym environment, and just now hitting personal bests on all these lifts and stuff. It works like crazy. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I don't know if you know my background at all, but one of my early mentors was Pavel Tsatsouline, and he came from the Soviet side of things. And, I'll never forget, like, I was like this whole power bodybuilder route, and I was like, I want to get better at the deadlift. And he's like, deadlift every day, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You can only deadlift once a week. That's what I learned from people over here. And it was amazing just doing like literally 5 reps every single day, 5 days a week, how much it adds to just the feel, like the lift feels better. And the more you feel better, the more it kind of excites that nervous system, the more you can integrate with the muscles. It's almost going back to the stuff that they talked about in the like late 1800s, early 1900s. Guys like Max Sick, Eugene Sandow, they would do muscle control exercises to develop powerful nerve force so that they could have greater strength within the muscle tissue. So it kind of sounds like you're rehearsing both skill, strength, and physique transformation all at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And since you're working those lifts every day, like strength, a lot of it is developed through practice. And like you said, you hit a groove. If you're only deadlifting once a week, it's hard to develop a groove and get better at it. I mean, you kind of forget, even your body kind of forgets what it takes, like how much you have to lean back, when you have to straighten out. Because you're just doing it so infrequently. Like a golfer, for instance, they'll practice their golf swing daily, sometimes a couple times a day.
Right.
Building strength is a lot, a lot like that.
That's interesting. That's a very cool perspective, Rusty. Well, I always ask people one more question before I let you go. And so you got the successful blog, you got several successful programs, you've been successful yourself with body transformation. What's your secret to success?
Oh, as far as just overall secret to success?
Overall, what can you tell people right now that will help them figure out how to get better results in their life? Physique transformation, whatever else, everything.
Yeah, I think just a couple things. I think number one is believing you deserve it. Like, why not you? Like when I was starting out my fitness business, you kind of think like, gosh, there's all these other guys with programs and things like that. But I have great ideas, like, why not me? So when I was starting out, I thought they were at a different level, a different sort of person. It's a weird thing. It's not that there's different sort of people. It's these guys just acted on, on helping people.
Yeah.
So why not you? And same with getting fit. Like, you'll see somebody in great shape. They're not a different sort of person than you. They just made a different decision. So I think that's part of it. And then number two is just never, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have failures, but just to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that first one. Why not you? I don't think anybody's ever said that on the podcast before. People do need to realize that they deserve it. You got to deserve it before you can ever achieve it. That's fantastic.
I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, Rusty Moore, we got a link below the show. You guys check that out. Rusty, thanks so much for your time, brother. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Tyler.